Here we go. Welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. Today's a doozy. I mean, they're all doozies, aren't they? But today's a special doozy. Special doozy for those of us in the woodworking trades. Now, this show is just for people who have wood shops, architectural millworkers, cabinet makers, furniture makers. We've even got people listening who make wooden playground furniture. But everybody is curious about finding ways to work smarter, not just harder all the time. Today's guest is Nic Frost. Everybody, hands up. How many of you already know Nic Frost? I think we all know Nic Frost. Nic said, "Hey, Dom, I've heard your new format for the podcast." And he goes, "I think you should put jokes up front." So here's one. I joined a gym and I said to the trainer, I want to impress beautiful girls. Which machine should I use first? And my trainer said to me, "Dom, try the bank machine outside." Oh, thank you, Nic, for that reminder that I should start with jokes. Our topic today, Nic and I, we're going to be talking about the eternal question, face frame versus frameless, the eternal unsolvable riddle, and a great campfire game to play at your next cabinet maker's retreat, isn't it? You'll hear how I open the episode with Nic on this one. I think you'll enjoy it. Before we get to the episode, though, what is this podcast all about? Because some of you, an increasing number, are new. Lately, we've had a massive increase in the amount of people listening to the show, and I have to thank all of you for that. Dennis sent an email to me the other day. We're actually going to read part of it later. Many of you have joined the Contractor Strategy Group, and I guess you're starting to tell your friends, which is great. We have way more listeners than we've ever had. So let me explain what the show is all about. What I do is I show contractors how to get back in control of their woodworking shop, even if they don't know where to start. See, the truth is you don't need a lot of extra time or a business degree to build a profitable, solid woodworking business, a construction company. You just need simple systems, and you need some new ideas to old problems. Simple systems that give you quiet confidence in your business. Now, you've probably noticed this, but for way too long, our industry's been keeping secrets, acting as if we're the only ones who have the secret sauce on building a profitable construction or contracting business. And well, as you probably figured out, I am here to put an end to that nonsense. So on this show, you're going to learn how to use simple systems in 3 places, okay? You're going to learn about them in the office, on a job site, and in their shop. Today's maybe a little bit more shop focused, but the mindset has to come from you, the owner. If there was a bonus 4th place that I show people simple systems, it's about the mindset of success and business ownership. Getting your business to the next level starts in your head like it starts with mine. I'm a business owner. I'm also a business coach. The only people I work with are construction and contracting business owners who want to get to whatever the next level is to them in their business. So on this show, I'm going to share simple systems so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There is no need whatsoever to reinvent the wheel. We just have to get that bad boy rolling. So if you're a business owner of a shop who's curious to find ways to run your business profitably, to have more time off, to do the things you love, to build a team you can rely on, and grow a company that one day you could sell, pass on to somebody else, or live off the cash flow, as many of you are working towards, you're in the right place. You know who else is listening to the show along with you? You might know it, but driving in traffic and walking their dogs are other people just like you. People in family businesses, people in partnerships, or people who are running the business solo just like you. Now, a lot of those solo people have no one to turn to. And so this podcast and this community really becomes a great resource for that. You've probably already figured this out, but I'm going to say it out loud. The reason I host this podcast, the reason I put so much energy into finding great guests like Nic, is because one day I want to be your business coach, flat out. As a matter of fact, I have a team of business coaches that I have personally hand selected. I have very high expectations for the people on my team, and I'm proud of every single one of them. It's hard to get on my team, and I'm happy of that. So one day you're going to get a chance to meet them. So as you listen to the podcast, ask yourself if you think myself and my team might be the right tool for you to get to the next level. With that being said, I'm going to go into business coach mode right now. I'm going to challenge you because in this episode, you're going to hear something, learn something, or realize something from Nic or me or about yourself. On that, I want you to take action in the next 24 hours. So look at your watch, look at your phone if that's where you keep your time. In the next 24 hours, you have to take action on something you learn here today. And then I want you to pay attention to how that improves your business or your life. If you make $100 change in your business and you do that on a monthly basis, then what's 100 times 12? That's a $1,200 change in your business. let's say that you make an extra $1,200, but let's say that you also find a way to save an extra $1,200. Well, that's $2,400. That doesn't seem like a lot for the year, but my friend, we have loads of these ideas and tactics and strategies. And every time you listen to the show, you're going to add another $2,400 and another $2,400. And after 10 episodes, you should be up to quite a bit of money. This show will make you money. This show will make you more efficient. This show will make you a better leader, because that's what we talk about here. So I'm going to leave you with an open coaching question. Open coaching question. Are you happy being a contractor who runs a few crews, or do you want to be a business person who just happens to run a wood shop? By the end of today's episode, you're going to know the answer. Let's get to it. It's Mr. Nic Frost. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. This feels like the longest calendar appointment, schedule, reschedule event that I've had in a long time.
July to August. Yeah. I'm glad we're doing it though.
Yeah. You're worth it. I mean, today we're going to be talking about face frame versus frameless. Who wouldn't tune into that riveting
and polarizing in some ways discussion?
Let me ask you this. This is one of my favorite polarizing questions.
Yeah.
Van Halen. Which lead singer was better? I know there's three, but the other one doesn't count. Is it Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth? And there is only one answer.
I think it's David Lee Roth.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Everybody else, there are 6 people listening who disagree, and those people can go listen to another podcast from here on.
There are some good Van Hagar songs, but as a catalog, yes.
There's a couple. We just aged ourselves, by the way.
Yes.
But that's the same as the face frame versus frameless conversation, which I find to be regional. Like, it's a very regional thing. Some areas are.
And even within regions, it's market by market. I mean, it's metro area by metro area. It's pretty. We'll get into that. Yeah.
And then there's some shops that they're geniuses at everything they do, but they throw a face frame into it, and suddenly things is upside down.
It's definitely a different mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask this question, and it's going to come across harsh and abrasive. Nic Frost, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these forward-facing contractors all over the world?
It's a good question. I'll kind of tell you a little backstory about how we got here today. So I actually spent my 20s getting a degree in chemistry.
In chemistry? Yeah, that's weirder than mine. Okay.
Yeah, in Minnesota, at the University of Minnesota. And ended up getting a PhD in chemistry. And I started teaching chemistry at the University of Minnesota.
Oh, no way. That's why your YouTube channel is so educational.
Yeah, so that's kind of my background was teaching first, and teaching tough concepts, right? So, and that kind of started as I was finishing graduate school, and I started doing that. And at that time, my wife and I had purchased a home, and I started with a table saw in my garage. And
do you still have the same table saw?
I don't, sadly. I don't.
Okay. It seems to be the first purchase for most people, and they still have it in the corner. Can't get rid of it.
Getting dusty. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was never intended to really grow into anything. But then family and friends saw it, started doing that. And then in kind of late 2016, we'll say, I made the decision to quit teaching and start a company.
So let's back up for a second, because by the way, this story, I know it's unique to you, and it's weird that you sort of found your way, like a life with no handrails. Think about like that.
Yep.
Like, how many of your chemistry friends went into cabinetry?
Probably zero.
Right. But the story actually repeats itself in our industry. And you kind of have the same position as I do, because we operate to serve the industry as well. But how many guys listening, and I'm talking to you right now, folks listening, how many of you started and you built a vanity for a friend, a kitchen for your aunt
at night on weekends?
You don't even know how you made it happen. You had to carry every piece out of your basement, your mom's basement. And you look around now and you've got a business that's doing $600, $800, $1 million, $2, $3 million. And you think, I don't even know how I got here.
Yep. that's a lot of people's story in this industry.
Yeah.
Um, and that's mine. And so January 2017, I was on my own, slinging cabinetry.
What was
And
your first paid I'll say woodworking, like finished wood
yeah, there were
job?
some family and friends where you can barely call it getting paid. But then there was a moment where some high school friends of ours were doing a very large remodel up in Duluth, Minnesota.
Mm.
And they had reached out to ask for a vanity. And I said, you should just let me see the whole plan. And they did. And they, let me bid on it. And they took a chance. And I
Wow.
home out of my 20 by 20 garage, very modern, something I wasn't really into at that time, didn't know much about.
Yeah.
And that was a success. That architect went on to hire me again for another project. And that was kind of really the kicking off point of,
yeah,
all right, there's business potential here. At the time I liked that much better than what I was doing at the U, which I did like, but it's very different.
Right.
And yeah, and then it kind of just exploded, and then it was me and an employee, and then two, and then three, and so I ended up doing that until about mid 2020, and that's when I kind of, I don't know, I really liked the software side, right? That was kind of my background in the chemistry world. It was more data analysis and.
Oh, really? Okay, so you weren't we weren't Breaking Bad.
No, we weren't. No. It's funny how much that comes up in conversation.
Oh, it has to, Walter White. I mean, Nic Frost.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the way my brain works, is it's very math forward, science forward, algorithms, coding, things of that
logical
nature.
You follow a logical process for
very much so. And so the software side of buying a CNC and cabinet software was really what I loved. And what I've come to find is that that's usually not where most cabinet shop owners are coming from, right? They're woodworkers first, and the software technical side is kind of the secondary, something they have to learn.
It's a means to an end to get in that CNC producing.
Right. And I was the other way around, right? I was that way first and a woodworker second. And so I think it's given me kind of a unique perspective to close down that shop and then start to do what I do now, which is basically since early 2021 is consult shops on generally cabinet software, Mosaic specifically. But really kind of what we're going to talk about today is we need to get into frameless. We have some commercial opportunities. More people are asking for full overlay. How do I do it? And so that's become a lot of what I've done over the last year or two as well, is help shops make that transition over the course of a few days.
From face frame to frameless.
Yes, and have that as an offering and do it over the course of maybe a few days or a few sessions. And of course, there are still some bumps in the road, but you're not learning by yourself for 6 to 9 months over 7 jobs, to learn all the
with the waste bin filling up with offcuts.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And so, and the cabinet software side of that really is what accelerates that, right? Frameless it's ready for software, CNCs, whether you're cutting parts yourself.
Smiled when you said frameless, but let me back up I want to back up and step to the side. Didn't you invent or modify some tooling as well?
So
I wanted people to have an understanding of your background's pretty wide ranging in this industry. Like you have quite a shadow that you cast.
Yeah. So, as I meet shops, and I've been fortunate enough to help almost 600 shops now directly in some way, shape, or form. That doesn't even include Facebook groups and things like that. And so as I help, we see the same problems, right? I see the same things over and over and over again. And so when that happens, I'm like, man, what is that solution? Because if I can provide that value, that shop's going to be better off for it. And it allows me to kind of keep coming up with these new ideas and, being able to help more shops. So one of them was made some upgrades to a Shop Saber CNC, which is very common CNC in the cabinet world, which was kind of getting more tools on their machine and dust collection, things of that nature. But then one of the things that always came up is the tool package that would show up with your tooling, meaning router bits.
Yeah,
often didn't have the necessary tools in it that cabinet makers really needed. And so one of the first things I would do when I was on with them is we'd have to order different tools. It's like, well, we just got this kit. Why, and the main culprit for that was a lot of the plywood shops. That plywood is not 3/4, right? It's always undersized. that 1/2 inch plywood is always undersized. That 1/4 inch ply is always undersized. And so the first thing we'd always do is go buy undersized tools to be able to dado, groove, and manage that material. So I'm like, man, why aren't undersized tools ready to do this work just like the norm when people buy cabinet toolkits? And so that's what got me going down this road, and ended up developing a line of tooling, a black diamond coating, which is a trademark coating to us, which has been shown to improve lifespan. And it's all direct to customer. And so it's been a really cool venture that launched 6 months ago, actually.
Oh, wow. I thought it'd been out longer because I've been following you for a while. It feels like that's a long time.
6 months launch, and many months before that, kind of getting up to that point. But that's really cool. I'll tell you what, that's actually almost more rewarding, seeing that actually pay off for shops in a very quick period of time, almost more than consulting in the software side. It's cool to see a tangible physical product actually help.
This whole CNC question. So, I mean, you've got a wide ranging background, but it's really focused, like you said, around the software and the CNC and the operations. You're really good on Mosaic as well.
So that's actually where, when I closed down the shop, that was going to be my focus. Is I knew I could help in that arena, helping shops with Mosaic, just as kind of a super user, right? Not affiliated with Mosaic in any way. And kind of started around the Minneapolis area, which is where I'm from and where I am now. And I knew I could help, but what I didn't know at the time was, is this a long-term, like, viable business? Are there enough shops that I can get to and help? And so kind of March 2021 into the summer, it was working, but it was a little sporadic finding, the shops that needed it. And then through social media, man, September, October of that year, started contributing in some of these Facebook groups. One of them is a Mosaic-oriented Facebook group, which we'll probably talk about at the end. People that are Mosaic users should definitely join. And just started answering stuff for free. And life has really never been the same since then. It just exploded. And I'll actually say that, I think, for anyone who's offering help to others, my thought when I started was if I'm going to be a consultant, then you need to pay for the knowledge, right? And that is, for the most part, true. But if you don't show people what you can do, how do people know that you're able to help them?
Right.
And so the second I started putting out YouTube content on my YouTube channel, which is Frost.
I was watching some today.
Tutorials, that's when it all changed, right? And ever since then, I don't really worry about that. I just go on, I answer questions at night, and it's been amazing.
If I can share on that side, and anybody else who's listening, it can be frustrating because you think, I've got all this knowledge and I want to share it, and there should be some compensation back. No surprise, I'm a business coach, I'm a capitalist, I'm Scrooge McDuck, whatever you want to call me, right?
Yep.
But I actually find that I get more than I give. Right. So in helping somebody, I actually get back more than I give.
Agreed.
And so then to me, it just stands to follow, give more. And sometimes I'll even say on the show that I believe that my role here in life, not just here on this podcast or on the other one, is my job is to throw enough value at the world as hard and fast as I can, that I'm happy with the overspray. Now that puts a lot of responsibility on me, and I guess on you as well. Like, you've got to make sure you're throwing quality at the world, because if the overspray is just a dribble back, you're not doing that great.
That's right.
You're just not. So do better, do more, give more, and more will come back. And I also find it tends to be that the listeners of this show are in association groups. They're consumed with quality. Like, they don't want to just slap together cabinets and put them out there and hope the customer doesn't see that there's flaws. They want great quality, and they want to make, returns for the work they've done, which is absolutely in line with me. And then those are also people who tend to join association groups, because you join an association group to kind of get your head out of your own shop, like lift up your head, look around and go, hey, other people are dealing with the same questions or the same challenges.
I call it the bubble. You got to get out of your own bubble, right? Because even if you're running a really successful operation, man, there are lots of tips and tricks you can take away, let other people kind of learn lessons the hard way. You kind of see how they do things. And that's how the industry as a whole grows, right? We got to be sharing what we found with each other. And event associations, like you mentioned, like the CMA. I've been to a few events now, and I'm going to some more. Love that group of people, love what they're doing. Some of the groups on Facebook that I'll mention at the end, amazing what is being shared out there for free from business owners, shop employees, finishers, doesn't matter. The value out there now is immense.
That's a great point. I mean, it sounds obvious now, YouTube and podcasts, but that information wasn't available 8 years ago.
No,
8 years ago. I have t-shirts that are 9 years old. Right. And it just was not available. And now, but let me back up. It would have been available if you went to a conference. So if you were in an association group, you went to a conference, maybe did a shop tour. You would have seen somebody doing it, and you'd get
forums online, which were around. And
but now, I mean, you can watch 10 videos a night. You can listen to a podcast a day.
And you can find true, like really good content, right? Not just like you said, quality,
schlocky, bad stuff. Some of it's fun. Some of it's fun, but you do need to get good quality. So I would expect that a business owner listening to this today might have pieces of this conversation that you and I are going to have and give that to his estimator and say, hey, estimator, listen to this. Hey, engineer, here's some tips, because leveraging this kind of tool is how people get ahead. Information has not passed over the cabinetry industry, the architecture millwork industry, the closet industry, the furniture. It's here, and we've got to take advantage. Anyways, we've agreed with each other quite a bit. Let me ask you this big question. Face frame versus frameless. We touched on this a little bit. Some people listening are like, look, my market just wants face frame. Everybody wants face frame. Nobody wants frameless. And so there might be some people saying, well, I don't care. My customers want that. That's what I'm going to offer. And others would say the opposite. What's your take on the market demand for face frame versus frameless?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I do want to preface this by saying, of course, that there are going to be some opinions in here, and it's not going to apply to every shop. And it is very regional, like we kind of discussed a little earlier. But, I think we should clear up basically what I mean by face frame. And that is, of course, we could have face frame inset, which will never go away, which means that doors and drawers are inset into the frame. It's a very kind of classic look. And there will always be homes that require that look, right? Those shops are going to sustain forever. What I mean by face frame is overlay face frame, whether that is a 1/2 inch overlay, full overlay, anywhere in between, versus a frameless application where there is no frame on the cabinetry. So what we generally see is this is mostly middle of country and the South, is they're generally still very much face frame oriented markets, whether that is 1/2 inch overlay, and some going towards full overlay because their customers are bringing them pictures of frameless kitchens and they're recreating that look with the methods that they currently know and are comfortable with. And but there are complications in doing that, right? Overlaying a large amount on a face frame gets hard with your hinge choices and things of that nature. And so they put in a lot of effort and money into solid wood frames and time and labor. Recreate what could have been an easier job if it were done in a frameless.
So you could be wasting time, materials, labor.
Solid wood processing is expensive compared to an edge banded part, right? And that's kind of what it comes down to. And so as shops start to see more and more full overlay being asked of them, I think that's when they really need to consider, if this is going to be something that we keep doing, when do we make that transition and start thinking about doing this as a frameless application and not putting a face frame on these cabinets, covering all of that up completely with doors and drawers to make the same look that frameless shop could do for much less money down the road. And so that's the big sticking point, and when shops need to decide when that is right for them. To your point about my customers don't ask for it. Customers don't know in general, right? Unless we're talking about contractors or designers who have some knowledge of what they're asking.
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm speaking about the homeowner who's got a Pinterest
the general homeowner
page put together and says, this is what I like.
Picture. Yes, I agree. And so more likely than not, they're either going to be a face frame inset kitchen, which is very obvious to see, and that requires, a face frame. But most of them are going to be full overlay, right? That crisp 1/8 reveal everywhere type kitchen is much more commonly sought after now than one that has much larger gaps between the doors, which is more like a partial overlay project. And so if that's the route that the market is going, and that's what customers are bringing to you, that's what's kind of the driving force here, right? To start to consider frameless as a real option for your shop, whether you thought you were ever going to be a frameless operation or not, or don't even know that much about it. And we can kind of talk more about maybe some of the basics later, but that
I was going to say, because this conversation actually starts at drafting.
Yeah. Oh, it does.
I mean, it starts at the kitchen table or the conversation with the designer, but then you've got to make that, it's got to hit paper at some point.
Yep. And so I think one of the hardest things that shops struggle with is, how do I sell this to my face frame loving customer base, right? If this is going to be more profitable for me, but it's also going to be easier to achieve their look this way. And I think that's what you need to hang your hat on, is you're not going frameless to make more money, right? No customer wants to hear that. That's not a sales tool. But you are doing it to give them more access to their cabinetry, right? So openings are bigger. Generally don't have face frames that cover some of the opening. But more importantly, it's much easier to get crisp 1/8 reveals, full coverage of the boxes, and achieve that look that the customer brought you in the first place. Right. So that's what I would start with as my sales message is, we offer full access cabinetry. Don't call it frameless sometimes, right? People say frameless. What's less?
Yeah, I'm losing something. Yeah.
What am I not getting? Call it European, call it full access. But we do this to achieve your look, right? This is what we do if that's the look you're after. If you would like frame inset, we may or may not have that as an option, depending on how the shop is built. But I would just start to wash away the middle, right? I would not put a face frame on anything anymore and then just cover it with doors and drawer fronts. Because you ultimately are creating more work for your shop. And in the end, the customer is getting the same look. So.
Yeah. And that, all that time, the profitability of a job, I hate, there's people out there that are creators, they're real craftspeople, and I probably frustrate them. And that's okay.
I probably do too.
Let's agree that we frustrate some people.
Yeah. Yes.
But I think my job here is to be that frustrating person and say, what about profits? And so when you talk about overbuilding is a form of waste.
Agreed.
Right? Over manufacturing is a form of waste. And waste takes us back to Paul Akers was a guest here just a couple of weeks ago. And Paul, of course, from Fast Cap and 2 Second Lean, like really brilliant. And in our industry, right?
Yep.
Lean in general talks about the types of waste, and one of the types of waste is overproduction. So if you're doing extra work to achieve the same look or the same outcome that the customer wants, then you're wasting the customer's time and money, and you're wasting your own time and money. And that any time and money that an owner has wasted is time they could have taken or money they could have taken out of the company.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think, using that as a sales tool, right? This is how we're going to achieve your look. You also got to believe it too, right? So if you as the shop owner are doing this but you truly don't believe that that is the right product to be selling, well, that's not going to work either, right? So you got to dabble in it, build some sample casework, see that this is not going to fall off the wall in 2 months, right? Because
it's frameless. How would it hold up?
Right. They get their rigidity once you put them all together. And frameless kitchens have stood the test of time everywhere around the world, right? So it's you can put some of those concerns to bed yourself, feel comfortable about the product you're selling, do a little showroom display, do full overlay, put a traditional door on it, right? People think frameless and they think modern. That doesn't have to be the case, right? It's all about how we dress it up, right? You can put a very traditional door, traditional moldings, right? You can make a space look very traditional and full overlay in that style, right? So you're not stuck to a modern design,
right?
You can be, and it's very amenable to that, but it doesn't have to be the case, right? You could put a 5-piece raised panel red oak stained door on a frameless box and create something that fits in the Midwest, just the same as a slab grain match door, let's say.
Right. that's in New York or Chicago or Seattle,
Yep.
high-end condo.
Same process, the same box, same. And that's another thing too that Frameless really helps with is the process becomes a lot more predictable, right? It's assemble a box. That box generally has pre-finished edge banding on it, PVC, color match, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That's a finished box, right? Once that door goes on, that box is in the staging area. That's gone, right? And so the steps to create a finished cabinet are much less, and it allows the skill level too of the person putting that together to go down as well, right? Because generally a CNC is creating all of your guide holes, dados and grooves for all of your parts, pilot holes, and so most of the assembly is completely predictable. And
I like that.
What I want, right?
Right? Isn't that what we want? Predictability.
I want my business to hinge on super talented craftsmen because, as we know and gets talked about all the time, that's becoming harder to find.
Right.
And it's just not a long-term scalable option.
Yeah. You know, it brings up so many opportunities here for just looking at how your business is run. And I think you're the perfect guest for the show because the show is about the business of the cabinetry business. It's actually not about tooling. It's not about methods of construction. It's not about edge banding. It's not about new tools for your CNC. Yeah. I hate to say it, but it's not. We're here because the people that are listening to this show have gotten to the point where they go, look, I know how to put out quality product. I'm working at building my team, but I actually am trying to run a business. And so this is a business level discussion at the product offering level. And then you added the overlay. If I can, you use the word hinge there very nicely. So I'm going to add overlay now as our puns and unintended words. The overlay of profitability on methods of construction, right? Yeah. Because, look at some of the lead times we have right now. If you're offering lead times of 16 or 30 months to your customers, that's fine if you're maintaining your profitability, but you know that some of those customers are going to go to the next guy. And so, by the way, for any of you shops who are trying to increase your business and trying to go find new builders or designers to work with, just go to a designer and tell me you have a 3-week turnaround. You will get instant business. That's true. Right? You're just going to. So my point, though, is for those of us that have a wave of work, we have a forecast of work out in 16, 18, 24, 36 months. Well, not 36 months would be a long way, but you know what I mean? Like when we've got that long range, we're going to be losing business out of the side. If you could find a way to take that 30-week delivery, that 24-week delivery, and drop it down to 20 weeks, you're going to be able to regain some of that business. I have a question that's probably going through the minds of some of the owners listening right now, which is the people side. Now, how do I hate to say convince, but let's say I'm the owner and we're currently doing, I'm going to let you choose. We're doing one or the other. We're doing face frame and and the owner wants to go frameless. Have you been part of that conversation on the floor where everybody's going like, this, they've got a mouthful of bees, like, this ain't going to work. Here's why it's not going to work. This is ridiculous. All you're trying to do is cut costs. This is not a good, horrible product. I'm trying not to swear, but I think you'd probably hear a lot of swearing on some floors.
You do. Yeah.
What's that conversation look like? And how can we prepare the owner for that discussion?
Yep. That's a really good question. And I've been a part of many of them, many. And the severity of them varies in terms of pushback and opinions. But generally, if there is some shop guys that have been there a while or have had multiple stops along the way, if they have any kind of hint of commercial in their background, they either tends to be very polarizing, right? They either loved that time and are glad to see that come back because of the benefits it can offer the shop, or they had a terrible time. It seems to be not much in the middle.
See, that's why I asked the Van Halen question. It's a polarizing question.
And so they must have had a bad experience and they wanted to get away from that to, maybe build some more furniture-like pieces, right? And that's why they came into this shop, because they wanted
to be more creative, I'll air quotes creative.
Right. And, and now they see that some of it is going back towards what they left. not all the way back, but trying to take some of those topics or those concepts and apply them to custom residential or that sort of thing. And so the way that we've kind of approached that is, when you hit some skepticism, we simply build some small units. We get that programming done. We get all of the work done ahead of time, meaning drawer guides, hinge holes, every dado, every pilot hole. If you're using adjustable feet to level your cabinetry, all of that machining is all done. Holes to connect cabinets together, holes to then pre-drill into a filler or an end panel, everything possible. And a lot of guys haven't necessarily seen that part yet, right? They're still doing some things manually in the shop. Yeah, they might be having a CNC cutting parts, but they're still doing something that requires a tape measure, some type of manual operation. And so when those guys see that right off the router, things are more perfect than any human could really ever reproducibly do, some of that skepticism starts to go away, right? And they say, wow, okay, that cabinet that used to take us 30 minutes on the bench, that might now take us 12. Oh, okay. I can see how the owner thinks this is a good idea now, right? Because it's a very clear reduction in time.
Yeah.
And then I think it takes then a project or two where you see a finished product and you step back and you take the 20-foot view, not the 2-foot view, and you see a completed space and a happy homeowner. And I think that's when it starts to sink in that, whether we think this is custom or whatever words people like to throw around in those situations, at the end of the day, it is a completed space that's beautiful. Customer loves it. It is going to last, stand the test of time. So who are we to step in and say that,
it's so interesting that you say that. Coach Lee, and many people here work with Coach Lee. He's the coach that works with me on cabinetry companies. Because I'm kind of oversold for one-on-one clients. So Lee has been taking clients with me for a while. But he brings up a really good point. He says, you are not your ideal customer. So the translation of that is, what I care about is not what my customer cares about. So if I say to myself, well, they're never going to care about that, or they don't know the difference. They do. In their way, a customer sees a kitchen and it's beautiful, or they see a vanity and it's what they wanted. Everything looks great. They feel like they've arrived in this world when they have that piece of custom furniture. This is custom furniture in their house. It's built for them, for their specs. They knew every piece of it more than anything else.
That's right.
One of the things I like to say on the show is the stuff that we do, the things that we make here in the cabinetry trade. It's the last thing people see before they go to bed and the first thing they see when they wake up.
True.
Right? So we're having an impact on people. And I'd like everybody out there to steal that line when they're talking to the people on their shop floor. Men and women they've got working there, and say, look, folks, this is important stuff. We're trying to do it better, faster, smarter, because then say the line, the things that we make is the last thing people see before they go to bed and the first thing they see when they wake up. We want them to be proud. Not every, you're always going to have some crusty guy in the corner, some angry employee but he's going to resist different chocolate bars in the vending machine. So let's just agree that he's always going to resist, right? But you got to give that perspective that we're doing this for the customer to provide what they actually want.
Agreed. And I think to play back on the word that I use there in the middle, which is the word custom, right? Which gets thrown around to mean 1,000 different things to 1,000 people, is I think it's important to understand what that word means to the homeowner. What that means to them is that they had some choices in the matter. The place functions for their needs. It is built to fit their given space and their appliances and the things they've chosen. That's custom, right? The style of cabinetry, whether it's frameless, face frame, that doesn't make you custom or not, in my opinion.
Oh, what a great,
and
Nick, that's a really good point.
Right. That I hear that word so much when we start to talk about maybe bringing in some frameless to a face frame shop, is we're too custom. Well, we're custom.
Do you know what? Listen, for everybody out there who says this is nice, but we're custom, they say the same thing to me, by the way, when we talk about lean.
Yep.
When we talk about continuous improvement, that's not going to work. We're a custom shop. No, stop for a second. And Rick Patak, who's our resident lean expert here, it tells to us all the time, the output, you're confusing the output with the process, right? The process is what we're going to make better, more efficient, or lean, or apply continuous improvement, not the output. Lean manufacturing or continuous improvement is not about sorting peanuts or grading watermelons. It's about making sure that whatever you're doing, whether you're renovating an entire home or building a set of cabinets or making cutting boards, you might think making cutting boards is perfectly suited to lean. Yes, just the same as making an entire home renovation.
And I think too that while we're talking about this, I think it goes into also CNC manufacturing in this industry in general, and some of the small shops who either maybe don't want to be doing that, believe in that, don't think it's right for them.
Don't want a CNC, you mean?
Yeah, don't want a CNC. Yeah. And because a lot of it is we're too custom, right? We're custom. Because I hear the same word in that scenario as well. And when you start to break it down, it's like we do a lot of custom things in cabinetry, sure, but most of what we do is build a box, right? Behind every little detail are boxes, right? So to me, it's why not buy the best tools to build that box, which is 80% of what I do every day. And of course, I put that number out of thin air, but you know what I mean.
Squares and rectangles, right?
Yeah, we cut squares, right? We cut rectangles. We drill holes in them.
We take big pieces of wood and we cut them into smaller pieces of wood, and then we make them into different shapes of wood. Yeah.
And so when you break it down that way, is does a CNC router and software produce a box faster, better, and with more things done in advance than I could? And the answer is yes. And so that's really what I think a lot of shops that are maybe still on the fence, some of the smaller shops that are still on the fence about it, need to understand is it doesn't take away your level of custom. In fact, it can enhance it. There are a lot of guys who have bought a CNC and just absolutely ran with it and are now doing amazing things they never would have thought possible, right? So it doesn't take away the craftsmanship, in my opinion. It can amplify it, and it can also repurpose it, meaning the skill set that used to be the master craftsman in the shop is now the guy controlling the software.
I was going to say,
when you watch some of those guys work, that is craftsmanship, right?
I was watching you work today. I was watching your YouTube, and sorry, just for the sake of it, Nic, what's the name of your YouTube channel again?
It is Frost CNC is the name of the YouTube channel.
Frost CNC. Yeah. I was watching there is craftsmanship in putting together those plans.
Yeah. I mean, the most valuable guy in most of these shops now is the guy sitting in the chair controlling the cabinet software.
Okay, so I'm going to agree with you, but I'm going to do it as a business geek.
Yes.
The flow of operations, because this is business geek, right? So we've got a business operations flow chart. We do our marketing. This is not going to be boring, folks. Please listen. Don't nap right now. Yeah. So business starts with marketing. We're out there and we're, promoting ourselves to different people, whether it's designers, architects, or GCs, right? Or homeowners, doesn't matter. That's all marketing. Then there's the sales process. And ultimately the sales process is just coming to understand what the customer needs and getting a signed agreement. That's the sales process. And this is where a lot of shops have a bottleneck, getting it from sales to the CNC. I'll just say the CNC, assuming everybody's got one, or to the saw, doesn't matter, right? To your point, the bottleneck is the guy or gal at engineering / drafting / whatever you call it. That's the gap. And that's where the creativity needs to come in so that we can understand our method of manufacture, understand what we sold and promised and how we're going to make it come to life on the floor. So the first bottleneck in a lot of companies is right there in that seat that you were talking about.
Yep. And it's not only feeding the router or the saw those parts and them being accurate and your drawings being accurate. It's okay, we have a unique detail. The guy that's capable of figuring out how to get that done on a router in 15 minutes and cuts 3 hours of labor out of the shop doing it manually, that's a huge deal. And those are the types of things where having that software operator who's really good at what they do, man, the return on that is just so high for a business owner.
Yeah. We've had, do you know Jonah Coleman? Yeah, Jonah's been on the show before, and just some brilliant insights into the different size of shops and what the level of IT needed.
Yeah.
as you grow, and I think you're probably along that same lines, is there's a tipping point there where you can get by with what you know from what the sales guy teaches you on how to run the router.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then there's another level of maximizing that thing. I was just at AWFS in Vegas. A friend of the podcast, Mark King, was down there, and he's a mosaic expert. So I got to meet him face to face, which is great. Nice. Mark's been listening to the podcast since he might have been like listener number 3, number 1 and 2 being my mom and my wife.
Yeah.
But you should see that guy dance in mosaic. Crazy. Yeah. And I think you do the same by watching your videos. You do the tango in mosaic.
We try. I mean, day to day, it's not a lot of that, right? It's more doing some of the basics and maybe some of the kind of more advanced programming to get shops what they need. But yeah, I mean, if it's a very unique item and it needs to be parametric so they can change everything about it into the future, those are fun days. No doubt.
I know it's funny you say that. That's one of the sticking points that I hear from people is we don't have our library. It's going to take forever to make this library. And the truth is it is going to take a long time, but you just do it one at a time, at a time, change your parameters.
And it depends on what that really means to people because, and it depends on the software you're using. Some make it easier than others to build out a library, create construction that works for your shop, and be able to change construction between different products you build, things of that nature. So some make it easier than others, but yeah, to truly dial in something that you can use on a daily basis and not feel like you're constantly modifying some of these items. Although in the custom world, that's never going to go away, right? Some things are going to have to be edited, modified.
Custom depths, widths, heights. I mean, that's
the nature of the industry we're in, right?
Sure.
That's never going to go away. But to get it as close to that as you can is worth the time. It is worth every minute you put back into it, into the future. And especially if your goal is to grow and scale, even more so. Right, because as you add people in the front office, as you add people designing and drawing, the more put together that is, the easier it is to onboard and go.
In your experience, how does this impact pricing for a shop? Oh, a little smile came on your face there.
Yeah, well, it's just a really constant topic on social media on how do I price?
How do I price this darn thing? Yeah, I've got a wizard. Like I have a tool that people download for me. It's called the Go Back calculator, but it's also because the Go Back on an install job, but it's also called the 1 hour calculator. Like, what does it cost me for an hour in my shop? And people don't know. So how do you loop back to that?
Well, gosh, what is my time? What does my shop cost for an hour calculator? Everyone should know that number, honestly, because as shop guys walk in and steal your attention for 15 minutes or 5 minutes here and there, I don't think people really see what that does to their production in a day.
No, but they know what it does to their brains. It pulls it apart, makes it like scrambled eggs.
Exactly. And what the actual cost of that is a lot higher than I think most people want to admit. But no, I think the big thing with pricing for me is I see too many shops, especially small shops, price on time and material, right? As if they were a contractor per se. And that's just not what we're doing. We're selling a finished product to a customer. And so really that price should be based on what the market is willing to pay, right? It is set by the market. It is not set by what my ply costs.
Since you're a chemist and I'm a wannabe economist, we refer to that as price elasticity.
Yes. And so to me, it's a work backwards from what my market is willing to spend for what I'm offering, right? Figure out, yes, I got to do this profitably. Otherwise, I don't have a business here. Mm-hmm. But the market is kind of controlling what that is. And if you want to change that, then you need to offer something that your market doesn't have. Differentiate, right? Be something that you can't find 10 other of you around town. So that was the big point that I kind of wanted to make about pricing is figure out what your market is willing to pay for your services, for what you offer, and work backwards, right? I think too many guys are unfortunately leaving too much money on the table, doing
Gobs of money on the table.
Yeah, and they've created a job for themselves instead of a business into the future, and so that's And it's still very common especially in the small shop. And so I think the next question is how do I assess what market value is in my area, right? How do I know what people are willing to pay?
Yeah,
Good question, right?
I can tell you, I have a simple system, but it's painful.
You got to hear
It's
no,
you're
right?
Yeah, Nick, you're absolutely right. Get prepared to hear no.
Yep. Until you start hearing some no's with some yeses, you're not there yet.
We run boot camp, right? And it's the construction millionaire boot camp. But typically it's for people that are more in the growth phase of their trade. There's lots of cabinet shops in there, but there's also other trades because it's a group coaching thing. And so we had a gentleman, Ben, I won't say his last name. Hey, Ben. Hey, Sarah. So Ben is in class and he had this classic pricing problem. He's like, I'm really good at what I do, but I don't think people are going to pay more. And it's kind of edge of my comfort saying the number anyways. And so he's in the third week of boot camp. So the boot camp is only 6 weeks long. He's in the third week of boot camp and he comes back to report on what he'd done on week 2, right? And he goes, he's talking to myself and Lee, because Lee coaches that as well. It's like, I put together a price and it seemed very high. And I heard you guys in the back of my head. So I added. He goes, then I thought, I'm going to add some more. So he added twice to his quote. And the lady that they were presenting it to bought right away and paid them the deposit before he had gotten back to his office. He had an e-transfer for the money. The deposit on the job was bigger than his average job before.
Yep.
The deposit alone.
Beautiful.
And so he got a yes because he asked. Mm-hmm. And there's a false sense of security saying, I win every job I go bid on because we're so good and people recognize my value. I'm kind of a big deal. If everybody's saying yes, go ahead, Nick, finish it for me.
All I hear when I hear that is that you've left money on the table.
Huge money. Yes.
Yeah. That is what I hear.
Yeah. So you have to get some no.
You do.
And it's going to happen.
But there's more than that too, right? If you're working a lot for contractors and designers, and if you lose a bid, ask them. They might tell you, right? Here's who won, and here's what we are going to pay them for the work. And then you can assess whether you want to try and figure out how to get to that price point, or if you feel like you're going to do a better job than that company and win out over time, right? If that's what we're doing here. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to hear no's. But
I'm not a golfer, but I think this analogy goes well. Golf analogy. You only change your club face a tiny little bit and you're either in the bunker, the sand bunker, or you're on the green, or you're in the other bunker, right? Left or right or center. And it's a tiny little adjustment that gets you either place. And for those of you that are shooters, it's the same as looking through your scope or your eyepiece, right? It's the very same thing figuring out your pricing and your market. It's a ton of little tiny adjustments. Are we talking to the right customer?
Yep.
Do we have the properly qualified customer? Are they looking for the job that we want to do? Are we priced right? Are we answering, are we helping them fulfill their design objective? They're not going to use that.
Do we have the product that allows us to reach that customer that's going to?
Yes. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. All of those things have to line up. And even then, I would be happy with a 33 to 40% yes rate, which means I'd be happy with around a 60 to 70% no, 6 or 7%. So let's say 7 out of 10 people are going to say no to your pricing. Let's accept that right out of the gate. Now, some people are shocked. They're like, their mouth just went dry. They're taking another sip of their coffee. Like 7 out of 10 are going to say no. And you think that's a good thing? I think that's a great
let's just
thing.
Clarify that too. That's most likely direct to homeowner type cabinet.
Right. Oh yeah. Direct to homeowner. Yeah.
If you've got contractor relationships and stuff, that's a very different animal altogether. Yeah. But I agree with you that
get prepared for it. But that's how you find out your pricing. And then, the tool that I've got, the go back calculator, we just call it the go back calculator, but it's the 1 hour. It's what's an hour of your shop cost. January 1st, the day after New Year's, you walk into your shop, you unlock the door, you flick on the lights, that counter starts. What does that hour cost? And so people download that. That's actually one of my bigger, more popular downloads. Yeah.
I'm guessing you get a lot of people that are very shocked at what they get back.
And what their number is.
Yeah.
Yeah. You only have to put in 10 numbers. And they're easy to figure out numbers. And then the 11th number spits out. And the people look at it and they're like, oh,
Although I do have to say, sometimes people get back to me and they're like, we are already charging more than that per hour, which is great.
That's good.
Yeah. Do you get the linear foot question? Don't worry, Nick, we price by linear foot.
All the time. Mm-hmm.
And what's your answer to that? Or what's your discussion around that?
This is another common one. And I don't know I don't know if it's black and white, right? There are some guys that use that model. They're able to get to a good price quickly. And if we're now going to hear maybe 7 out of 10 no's, if we can get to that price in a reasonable amount of time, assuming 7 of those are going to go nowhere, I don't want to dump 4 or 5 hours into a price. That's too long for that amount of no's. So I don't know. I'm not fully ready to swear that model off completely for the right shop, but it definitely leaves things on the table.
Yeah,
that's for sure. What do you generally see?
To me, it comes back to a sales and marketing question, which is not what people want to hear on the show, because they don't know. Rarely do we get people in this industry who came into it from a sales and marketing background. They're tradespeople, craftspeople, right?
But I think more people need to hear it too, because it is an important part for sure.
If I ask you what price per linear foot is, I'm trying to commodify you. I'm trying to make you, how much is your bag of white rice versus the next bag of white rice versus the next bag of white rice?
That's right.
And that's not a fair way to assess how your shop is set up versus the next guy versus the next guy.
It strips away all other value adds that you may bring.
It's all gone. Yeah. Now, maybe in my mind and in your mind, I can look at a set of plans and go, look, per linear foot, it's going to cost this much. I'm going to do a little bit of math to check it, but I'm not going to let the customer force me into a per linear foot price, because then they hang up and go, oh, you're too high. We're never going to deal with you. You're too high. Or even a designer or architect might say that. What's your linear foot cost? Well, you're just dealing with a purchaser. Just change your language and say, look, we're a custom builder. I appreciate you want to know the linear foot price. I want to know it too, but I really need to see the plans before I give you a price that you're then going to tell the homeowner. And then 2 of us look bad and the homeowner's upset. Can I just see the plans and I'll give you a better number? Like, just avoid the conversation, because it doesn't go anywhere positive.
Yeah.
Even if I use it in the back of my head to do a very quick calculation.
Yes.
And we all have that calculation. There's a gentleman in my town who does concrete for high rises. So you're talking about 30-story high rises, right? So one of my friends is an estimator for him. Old Italian guy is the owner. And so my buddy's doing the estimating. He's got everything laid out in front of him. And the Italian owner comes by and goes, I can do the accent because I'm Italian. This job is going to cost this much. And my buddy's the estimator. He's got to go through to all the takeoffs, right? The old guy was off by 10 grand. He just looked at the job. 30-story high rise. He was off by 10 grand on what my buddy presented as the final estimate. So some experience does come into it, but you know how to ballpark it. Yeah. Then you got to go do the math to prove that the ballpark was right.
Yeah. No, but I think it lends to another point that comes up often, which is kind of comes back to that time and material, and why we shouldn't do that in cabinetry is, to the end customer, your price is the price. And if people ask you to break that out, don't do that, right? That is not, you don't ask other manufacturers to do that. You don't ask, Ford to do that. So don't feel like you need to validate that price to anyone. The market is going to determine if that is a valid price or not. And so I think that's another one too, is kind of like you said, right? Don't get into that discussion, right? Don't commodify what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's another way to, the price that you tell someone is, it's a yes or no, it's a binary now. And even, room by room or like cabinet by cabinet breakdowns. I get room by room on larger homes, maybe, but man, when you try and break it down that far, people think it's just so a la carte. I'll take that and I won't do that. But what they don't realize is that changes how we might build. It changes maybe our material ordering. It changes how parts are about to nest on a router. There are just a number of things that
storage movement.
We don't really manufacture that way anymore. And so I would hesitate to line item like to every, to the nth degree as well for that reason.
Okay, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm pretty sure we're going to have you back again.
Awesome. I'd love to.
Yeah. Let's see if anybody listens to this episode first.
Yeah. That viewership.
I'm sure they will. As we start to wrap up, though, there's a number of places we can find you. Well, let me ask the question formally.
Sure.
Nic Frost, where in the world can we find you if somebody's looking for you?
So in terms of me and some of the things that I'm doing on the consulting side, frostcnc.com has all the info there. In fact, I'm doing some tour stops, some classes around the country. We had 10 on the books. There are 4 of them left coming up into the fall here. There's one in the Frederick, Maryland area on September 22nd. There's a Charleston class on October 13th. And then a Little Rock and Fort Worth, Texas class in November. And those are kind of Frameless 101 software CNC related classes. So if any of the topics that kind of came up today interest people, you can take that further. We're doing a 1-day kind of start to finish, design, cut, assemble, kind of mock install, the whole thing coming up, which will be very cool.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, of course.
Because, I have a production schedule as well, and there's a good chance this won't even go live until November. Mm-hmm. So if somebody wants to get on the, I don't know, do you run a wait list? If somebody wants to get on the next round, how do they?
That's a good point. So we'll probably do some more coming up next spring. But the courses have been going very well. We've had most of the classes are full, and they're kind of getting tweaked as they go, getting better as they go, kind of as they see what people need to see and hear and things of that nature. So I'll be definitely to be doing more of those.
What's your but let me just ask, because people are, if somebody wants to email you, or how do they get on the wait list? I'll say, how do they contact you?
Nic, just NIC at frostcnc.com. That's also on the website there in the contact area.
Oh, okay.
There are some mosaic downloads there, some parametric items I've made for people that are now for sale. You can download and use them. And then Frost CNC Tooling, the tooling brand is frostcnctooling.com. And that one is, I don't know, my current love affair, because it's like I said, it's just cool to take a physical product and actually make an industry-wide difference in a short period of time. It's been awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So a little invention going on there, and really. And then there's actually one other quick venture too. This is actually a very cool quick story, but back when I was teaching chemistry, there was a student who I loved having, and he's just the smartest, and I was like, man, he just always stuck out to me. And as I'm developing kind of some of these software ideas that are not mosaic related, kind of some of these other things that I want to work on, it's like, man, I need a partner to help me do that. And so it had been years. I reached out to him. And so he and I are now kind of working 50-50 on some software ventures that are going to launch here this fall. I can't really say much about them yet, but they are just things I see all the time, value that we can add through little software apps. So that's going to be coming this fall too, and that'll be on frostcnc.com. You'll be able to get info on those as well. So I'm a fan of your YouTube channel. I watch a lot of your YouTube videos.
Thank you.
Or I refer to them, or I send people to them.
Great.
And you've got lots of mosaic stuff there.
Lots of mosaic stuff on YouTube. Those are great tutorials on not only like kind of the item and the topic that are being talked about, but also what mosaic is capable of. Right? I think a lot of people see it on the surface as, yes, I can drag boxes in a room, and yes, the basics are there, but I don't think people see how deep you can really get with it for your business. And I love that the tutorials kind of highlight that you can really push a software that's very accessible to kind of an extreme. You can go a really long ways with it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, you and I are in the same industry. It's only now that we've met in the last little while that I've been following you for a while, but it sounds like you and I both believe in the same thing, which is just try to help people. And
it is.
Those that want to talk to us more will reach out and say hi. And those that don't or aren't ready yet, that's fine. Just continue to learn whatever you can from us.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll have you back again. Thanks, Nic. Have a great day.
Yeah, see you.
Bye.
Well, Mr. Nic Frost, thank you so much for joining us here. I very much appreciate you being with us. I like the fact that we kidded around a little bit. I like the fact that we had the Van Halen question on the table in front. One of my favorite questions ever. Another campfire question you can ask. If you're about to set off on a long road trip with one of your buddies, throw the Van Halen question on the table. You'll be talking about that for hours. It gets pretty heated sometimes. But what did you learn from Nic? What did you learn from me? What did you learn about yourself? What can you put in place? Remember, the challenge that I put in front of you is to look at your operations, look at your marketing process, look at your sales process, look at your customers, look at your biggest bottleneck. What can you do differently tomorrow within the next 24 hours to change the outcomes in your business? Because it really is up to you. This show is all about the business of the contracting business. You're in the business of your business. Let's go put something in place. So as we go to this portion of the episode, I'm going to break it into 3 equal parts. I'm going to start off with a quote today because I think that's important. It's actually some factoids we're going to give you. And why would I do that? Because I want you to think a little bit differently. I want you to have a little bit of trivia as well, but I want you to open your mind to the possibilities. And so I always have these little tools here because tools of our mind are actually the sharpest tools we can use. You and I are going to get ahead in our business by thinking, by making plans, by being strategic, not by doing. And I know that sounds different than the way you got to where you are. Please remember, I started in the trades as well. But I wanted to move out of the trades because I was working outside in the rain all day. I think I may have told you guys this before. You've heard it on previous shows, but my first company was a Christmas light installation company, but my first construction job was doing forms for my uncle's framing company. And then I moved to become a framer. And I can remember one day framing, we were holding up an outside wall and I'm in the Pacific Northwest. It's just pouring. So I'm holding up an outside wall as the carpenter was nailing everything down the bottom plate. I remember looking up, you see, I was probably looking up at my right arm since I'm right-handed, but the water was coming in my right sleeve. And I looked down and the water was going out my left leg. And I thought, what the heck am I doing here? And that's when I made a decision not to leave contracting, not to leave construction, but to do something else in the trade. It's pretty easy to understand at some point your body can't keep up anymore. Those of you who are doing an install right now are wondering why your neck, your back, your shoulder, your knees hurt. And the answer is because you're doing installs right now. I'm not knocking doing installs. We all got to where we are today by doing that. But if you've got a vision for the future, then I want you to open your mind to some of these things. So these tools help you open your mind. Number 2, I'm going to ask you a favor. And number 3, we're going to identify a common problem for cabinet makers, mill workers, contractors, business owners in our space. Okay. And the problem that we're going to be solving today is one that you may have heard me talk about before, but I've gotten a lot of feedback on it. I got a lot of side chatter, I call it, emails and text messages. And it's the Dom, I need to hire a person, but I can't afford it question. We're going to talk about that. If you've ever been in a situation where you want to hire somebody, you can't afford it. You need a new piece of machinery, but you can't afford it. You need to upgrade your truck, but you can't afford it. It's finally time to get a different CNC, but you can't afford it. It's time you want to move or upgrade to a new building, but you can't afford it. I'm going to show you with logic how to do that. There's no escaping it. It's based on numbers. Numbers don't lie. And you've probably heard me say this on the show before, but numbers are cold. Numbers don't care. But it's funny that talking about numbers gets hot. Explain that one too, but it's true. As I do that, I want you to think back, and this is a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was written by Robert Kiyosaki. I wonder, hands up, who here has read that book? It's a fantastic book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. One of the things he talks about there is the mindset of success, the mindset of poor people versus broke people, because there is a difference. The mindset of the worker bees versus the leaders in this world. And if you've ever said to yourself, I need something, I need new machinery, I need a new vehicle, I need a new employee, but I can't afford it, you're asking yourself the wrong question. And the very simple system to change that is to say, I need a new, let's say CNC. How can I afford it? Not saying, but I can't afford it, changing it and saying, how can I afford it? I need a PM. I need a project manager. How can I afford it? That's the kind of thinking that you get on this show. And that's where I want to take you right now. So we're going to jump into that. And again, listen, I don't know what you need: an administrator, an estimator, a project manager, a purchaser, a bookkeeper, an engineer. I don't know what you need. You do. I'm going to show you how to pay for that. I'm going to show you how to do it. We're going to simplify it. I'm going to give you the steps on how to fix it. All right. So, we talked about face frame versus frameless. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat to go get some wood trivia? Because don't we need some more trivia about wood? Well, here's a couple of interesting factoids that I found about wood. Did you know? This is how you're going to start it off when you go home and tell your spouse, probably your wife. Did you know, honey, ping pong balls are made with celluloid, which is a byproduct of the paper making process. And paper, of course, comes from trees. So there you go. That's how I brought it back to wood. Did you know? I wonder if you knew this. Did you know? Did you know trees never die of old age? Trees are only ever killed by elements outside of their control, which can be insects, diseases, and us, people. That's why sometimes, if they're really lucky, a tree could live to well over 1,000 years old. I'll bet your kids would love to hear that, or your grandkids, or your nieces and nephews. Did you know? I wonder if you knew this, but did you know trees actually talk to each other? Some trees, anyways. When willows are threatened by insect pests, what they do is emit a chemical warning to nearby trees, and those trees secrete more tannin to put the invaders off. Tannin is what makes the waters brown in the northern climate. Well, almost anywhere. That's what makes the water in your rivers brown. It's tannin that leaches out of the trees, right? Now, not all trees grow big and strong in the world. The world's shortest tree is something called a dwarf willow, which lives in northerly and Arctic tundra regions and rarely grows more than a couple inches high, which is roughly up to your ankle. And as I say, that piece of trivia, all I can think about is I really want to hunt reindeer and muskox up there one day, but that's for a different show, I guess, not this one. Hey, I want to say thank you to Dennis. Dennis left a review for the show, so thank you for that. I would like you to leave a review for the show as well, because I talk about paying it forward. Dennis did that, and he also sent me this quick story, so I want to share it with you. Dennis left a review. I'm reading my script here to make sure I get his story right. His story about paying it forward is from Arkansas. I don't know if Dennis, are you from Arkansas? I did not check that. I should check that. But anyways, Dennis told me this story that came from Arkansas. When the supermarket clerk tallied up my groceries, it was $12 over what I had on me. I began to remove items from the bags when another shopper handed me a $20 bill. Please don't put yourself out, I told him. Let me tell you a story, he said. My mom is in the hospital with cancer. I visit her every day and I bring her flowers. I went this morning and she got mad at me for spending my money on more flowers. I mean, whose mom doesn't do that, right? She demanded that I do something else with that money. So here, please accept this. It is my mother's flowers. Boom. So as you've probably noticed, over the last few episodes, I've been reminding or asking you to leave a review for the show, paying it forward. This is a nice story. Dennis has obviously heard me say that, and he thought he'd share that. So Dennis, thank you. I really appreciate that. And if you get a chance to leave a review for the podcast, or if you watch it on YouTube there, I would really appreciate that as well. Again, not for me, but for the other people who you're going to be paying it forward to. All right, let's move on from that. Right now, we're going to go solve a business problem. You guys ready for this? We're going to solve a problem. The problem is what we talked about earlier. The problem is when you're faced with running your business, but you're being pulled in a gajillion directions. Who here has had that? Put your hand up if you've had that. Don't put your hand up if you're driving, just nod. And you're saying to yourself, things would be different if I could just hire a bookkeeper that I could trust. If I just had an admin person. By the way, I will tell you that Coach Lee and Coach Lee is one of the coaches on my team. Coach Lee and I often have conversations about the tipping point for a cabinet shop. Do they have an admin or do they not have an admin? It's funny because you might think, oh, it's revenue size or number of employees or what's their machinery setup. If you want to improve your operations, you have to have a functional admin. So what does that mean? Well, what I mean by that is an administrator who's helping you gather data and do some of the work that is important but not urgent so that you can focus on your revenue responsibility per hour. You guys have heard me talk about that before, not a subject for today, but you already know what that is. Like, how do I do my highest and best use work? And when you're freed up to do that, your administrator could take on other things, and that's getting to the next level. So you might want to hire a bookkeeper to help you with your books. You might want an administrator to help you with admin. And there is a huge list of things that an administrator can do for you in the categories of marketing, in the categories of sales, in the categories of moving paperwork from sales through to, let's call it your engineering or drafting department. There's a bunch of work they can help with, moving it from the drafting department to the floor. Let's say that you're sending it to a CNC or beam, whatever you're doing, right? But getting it from the sales process and getting that contract signed with the customer, getting selections, all that stuff, getting it onto the floor, time tracking on the floor, getting accounts receivable. The list goes on. And right now, all of those little pieces of time are being done by you or somebody else in your team. Here's an interesting piece of trivia about it. We're on a tangent, on a tangent, on a tangent. Did you know I just hired my EA, my executive assistant and assistant? So if you ask, does Dom believe in this stuff that he talks about? I 100% believe in that. Because if I pay my assistant a very good wage, I want her to be very well compensated, and she is, then I can't burden her with stuff that's below her dollar value to the organization. So yes, I just hired her own VA. So please don't think that I'm just here spouting off and I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, it's true. Sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. But when I do know what I'm talking about, I'm going to tell you. I just hired my assistant and assistant. So I changed the language in my head, which was, how can I help my assistant produce more, better, faster for me? You can do the same. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. Do you need an admin? Do you need a bookkeeper? Do you need an estimator? Do you need a project manager? Do you need a CNC? Do you need a new truck? Do you need to afford money for marketing? It doesn't matter. The world is actually going to pay for that for you. And the way that you do that is you get this, it's called a wizard. It's a report, right? It's a tool. It's an Excel spreadsheet. Guys, nothing fancy. It's an Excel spreadsheet. We all have Excel, right? But it's what you do with the Excel spreadsheet that's important. So it's called the Go Back report or the 1 hour calculator. Now, some of you are like, oh yeah, Dom, I already downloaded that. I got that. It's on my hard drive. Okay, great. What's my next question? Those of you who would like to ask the next question of the person in the car next to you, the guy walking his dog on the next street over, the shop owner one state away, ask him, did you open it? Are you using it? Are you using it to its full potential? You got it for free. Free must mean it's worthless, right? No, I'm trying to add so much value to the world that I'm happy with the overspray. The Go Back report has two names. Number one, it's called the Go Back report. The other thing it's called is the 1 hour calculator. And we change the name depending on what the client needs to use it for. Okay, so this is an actual coaching document we use to change the direction of a company so that the business owner is growing their business on purpose, right? So when we call it a Go Back report, I want you to understand the cost of a go back, of a punch list, the cost of putting one guy in one van for 1 hour, because it will surprise the heck out of you. What we use that information for is to go back into our company and make the changes that we need to stop that from happening as much as possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable. We're in the trades. I get that. The other reason we use this is the 1 hour calculator. And the best visual I can give you on the 1 hour calculator is to ask you the question, do you know your hard costs, your actual costs to run your business on January 1st, the first day you flick on the lights for that hour? What does it cost for 1 hour of your business? Or let me say this, if I needed to rent your company for 1 hour, what would that cost you? And then what would you mark it up to me to rent it? In a way, that's what we're really doing, right? When we're building a kitchen for the Smiths, the Joneses, the Hernandez family, they're renting our operations to build them a kitchen. They're also renting your project manager, yourself, all estimate, all those things. You need this report to do that. So imagine now that this report is in front of you, like it's stacked in front of you. The way I want you to use this when you get, by the way, here's how to get the report. Just text me. You guys know the number. Say it with me. Text me at 315-903-7853. And then when you text me, all you have to say is go back. Go back, Dom. And then I know which report to send you. So it's the Go Back report. It's easier to text than 1 hour calculator, but fill your boots, however you want to say it. Most people say go back. So say go back and text it to me at 315-903-7853. When I see that show up, I'll send it back to you. Download it, get it on your hard drive, right? So now you've got it on your hard drive. It's an Excel spreadsheet. Open it up. There's only 11, well, there's 10 boxes. The 11th box fills itself. Not too bad, right? So there's only 10 little pieces of work I want you to do, but it's the smartest work you will do this year in your company. Maybe in the last couple of years, if you've never had a chance to think about growing your shop, it might be this one opportunity that sets you on a new path. That's where I want you to get to. So you open it up anyways, there's 10 boxes to fill in. When you go into one of those boxes, it talks about labor. It talks about labor. How much are you actually paying for labor? Now, there's a little bit more detail there. There's multiple boxes, but it's all very understandable when you get in there. But if you need to hire an administrator, Let's figure out how much an admin costs in your city. We've talked about it on the show before. And add that number in there on an hourly basis. Once you've let that soak for a couple months, your company is used to charging that fee. And you have now found a way for the world to pay for your admin or your bookkeeper. Well, let's not be or people. Let's be and people. You've found a way for the world to pay for your admin and your bookkeeper and an estimator and a project manager and a painter for the booth and a booth. Now, some of you are saying, oh, hold on, Rubino. That sounds like you want me to increase my prices. Did I say that? Are you telling me that there's nobody in the city who is crushing it right now building cabinets or high-end architectural millwork who is 3, 4, 10, 20 times your price? I know them. They listen to this show. They're in trade associations like AWI, CMA, AUMAC. They're in the NAHB. They are out there right now and they're charging double what you're charging and triple what you're charging, and they're still busy. And the reason they're charging that, and you know they're charging that, is because you look at their office and you go, huh, they've got an administrator, they've got an estimator, they've got a project manager, they have an engineer, they have a purchaser, and that owner is driving a Mercedes. And he's not in town. Where is he? In the Bahamas. How did that happen? Simple systems. Just simple systems. One step at a time, you'll get there. Our industry is fantastic, by the way. Our industry is fantastic because many of you started. I'll use the story of one of my particular clients. The first thing he ever built was a headboard for his aunt, a headboard for his aunt's bed. He now has a multi-million-dollar architectural firm. Oh, you think, well, that's cool. I've heard of that before. Sure. Where did we take him, though? He was an architectural millwork firm who now has an architectural glass firm, an architectural steel firm, and an upholstery company all rolled into that. But you look at it from the outside and you don't see anything different. The office looks the same, kind of quiet. You wonder what's going on. Well, he's crushing it. And guess what tool he's using in the background? The Go Back report. So anyways, I want you to have it. You have to want to have it. I mean, I can't help you there, but if you do, just text me. My cell phone number is 315-903-7853. And just text the words Go Back. And then I will send you the report called Go Back. That's how it works. So one more time, just for those of you who haven't had a chance to write it down yet, say this number out loud to your dog while you're walking the dog so you can remember it, or go back and listen to the podcast later. The cell phone number to get that report is 315-903-7853, and just say Go Back. Okay, that's the end of the episode. I truly appreciate the fact that you put up with all my side tangents and dumb jokes and content that has to do with trivia. But look, we're trying to keep it real. All I really want is one day to have a glass of wine with you or a cup of coffee over a table and shake hands. That's really what I'd like. And actually, I hope that happens one day soon. Until then, we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.